Welcome to Fantastic Females, our adventure to finding the mythical island of freedom together. I'm Kalyani.
And I'm Rupali. We are your next door finance experts sharing our experiences in the world of money and energetics. Hi everyone, welcome back to Fantastic Females. We've got such an interesting topic today. We are going to speak all things crypto today, and we've got an expert in the house, Yashu Tanna, who is a blockchain integration engineer at a cryptocurrency exchange in Africa. He's been within the finance space since 2013, working with IT systems, and has focused on crypto in his personal capacity over the past 5 years and 2 years professionally. In addition to that, we grew up in the same house, and he's my cousin. So super excited to have you on board with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rupali and Kalyani. And yeah, I approve this message. We did grow up together.
Yeah, so I think today what the idea was to just really go through the basics of crypto for someone who doesn't know a lot about it. A lot of us know crypto, a lot of us have heard about blockchain. We don't know what's what by the end of it. So we were hoping that you'd give us some color in terms of your view on these topics.
100%. And I don't think you're alone, and I don't think many are alone. That feeling that you have that you're being left behind, more commonly known as FOMO, and that feeling that you have that you just don't seem to understand what everyone is going on about, I don't think it's an uncommon thing to feel. And a large part of why I'm excited to be here today is exactly that, is so that I can try to clarify some of these things and try to simplify what seems to be quite a complex thing. So even though while it's a technical topic in reality, it doesn't need to be so... You don't really need to know the technicals to understand it.
Yeah. Welcome, Yashu, first of all. Thank you so much for your time in advance. And this crypto is one of those things that's always kind of coming up around us. At the moment, it seems to have gone out of favor, but especially 2020, 2021, it was the buzzword. When I started putting out content around trading, one of the first and most kind of frequently asked questions was around, oh, do you teach crypto trading as well? Can we apply your techniques to crypto? And that was quite interesting because I personally have had a mixed experience with crypto. So back in 2021, around exactly 2 years ago, I was working as an apprentice with a UK company that's instrumental in my trading journey. I started my trading journey with them. And they were partnering, I think, with one of these upcoming companies that was floating a coin. It was called, I don't even remember what it was called. I think I've blocked the memory. And they did some sort of marketing kind of activation around it. And since I was part of the team, we were getting slightly prior notice to what was happening. And I put a sizable amount for me at the time, and the amount literally went 10 times, which was great. But then in trying to get it out, there are those long addresses, and I ended up sending that amount to the
wrong address.
Black box address instead of sending it to my wallet, something like that.
Oh no.
And it was my first experience, and I didn't even know that there was this and there was this other thing. Oh. And it was such a traumatizing moment because then you can't talk to anyone. There is no bank. There is nothing. And it's not gone to anyone. It's not gone to the company. It's not come back to me.
It just exists,
it's just gone
and you can see it forever.
The black hole.
It is so annoying. Okay, so that was my first traumatic experience. And after that, I don't think I had any other majorly traumatic experiences, but I have overall lost money. And I was working with an advisor that was advising the same company. I'm guessing he wasn't very good because this coin doesn't exist as well, the one that I had this initial experience with. I didn't lose any money overall because it was so inflated in value on this coin, but just the whole kind of system around it is so new, with the addresses and the wallets, and pancake swap and staking and all of that was kind of
That's it.
a few things that I have tried and not made money on. So it's one of those things that I always tell, if someone asks me, then I always tell them to play it safe. If they understand what they're doing, then it's a great space to be in. And that's what we're here to do today for ourselves and for whoever's listening, right?
Yeah,
very
I think
exciting.
we should exactly. I think we should take a step back and just ask the question, what is crypto? Because it's such a relevant, important thing. We all think we know it because we hear it so much. But what is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a great first question, right? But before I go ahead, I really want to apologize for how difficult it's been as an industry for anyone to come along on this journey. Kalyani, the stuff you've been through, again, you're not alone. I see this actually very often at work where
Really?
customers deposit money into the wrong network and they just lose their funds. And this is not
Oh, no.
something that necessarily is anyone's fault. It ultimately comes down to education, and the
Yeah.
education is still lacking, and it's because it's a difficult, not difficult. Sorry, it comes down to education because it's a difficult topic to wrap your head around and apply normal first principles to it.
Yeah.
I would love to start with just that. I mean, we can maybe get back to the stuff that happened to you in some of my examples later. Sorry, I'm rambling
Sure.
on a little bit there, but I'm going to come back to that one. So let's answer the question, what is crypto? Crypto is short for what's currently in today's world known as cryptocurrencies. Ultimately, what that is a digital currency, and much like any other currency that's used in various economies to transfer value from one person to another person, this is a currency that's used in the digital economy. So if you're a South African, you're using South African rands. That's your currency. If you're trading in Dubai, then your currency is the dirham. You're trading in United States, your currency is the United States dollar. Ultimately, when you're working in the digital economy, we need a new currency that can be used to cross borders, to break down borders, to be able to, really recognize the oneness of humanity across various geographies. So you holding a currency that can be used in any geography. That's what a cryptocurrency is. The only thing that you really need is the internet, and the internet is also one of those tools that humanity has developed that really brings us together across geographies. Right now, you're in Dubai, I'm in South Africa, and ultimately, we're still having this conversation. Cryptocurrency ultimately is just a mechanism for someone to transfer value ac- across the internet without any intermediary playing a role in that transaction. So that's a sort of textbook definition. From a more simplistic point of view, like if someone doesn't understand the finance, doesn't understand banking, doesn't understand all of that, it just wants to understand what is this weird thing. Like I understand the internet, I don't need to know how the
Yeah.
HTTP protocol works. I don't need to understand how computers work. I know that when I type www.facebook.com, I see my friends' photos, right? So like if you want to break it down to that very simple level, then another really good example is something like Super Mario, right? Like video games. If you look at the normal game of Super Mario, you have this little plumber running around, bashing his head against the wall, and for each one of those bashes, he gets a little gold coin. Once that little gold coin accumulates to 100 points, the game automatically buys for Mario an extra life, right? So ultimately, cryptocurrency is very much that gold coin. It's something that gives you utility in the environment within which you're using it. I think that can be a very layman definition, and then the technical definition. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
Very,
that's
helps you
very true.
amazing.
understand.
I'm laughing to myself because I seem to be in this Mario Inception world. My son can't stop talking about it, and now we're talking about it in the context of crypto. So that analogy will stick. Thank you for that.
But yeah, so I mean, it's very much like that. The only difference between a currency that sits in Mario versus a currency that you can use to make a financial transaction is just the transportability of something, right? And that's where the word crypt in the cryptocurrency comes from. That crypt is actually short for cryptography and cryptology. That is a way for you to spend your currencies. And I like to actually, I want to actually move away from calling them cryptocurrencies. I want ultimately this this tool of cryptography and cryptology. It's a science, right? It's a mathematical science, and it's used as a mechanism to make sure that only the person who really should be able to spend a currency that they hold and they truly own is able to do so, and is mathematically and provably able to do so. That's ultimately what the crypt in cryptocurrency is.
Now, that's very interesting because I was starting to make connotations with cryptic since sometimes it's so difficult for us to understand.
And that's very true too. Cryptic is very much of a byproduct of, again, cryptography. Cryptography
Same,
is the
yes.
art of hiding information, or the art of hashing information, making information
Correct.
more compact.
And hence the regulators are jumping up and down, isn't it? Because it's so
Of course.
cryptic that they feel they can't control it. And so how do we put controls in?
Yeah, look, the regulation side of it, I kind of understand, right? Earlier when I said you've got your currencies that divide your economic sort of trading grounds. If you've got South Africa, you've got rand as your currency. You've got United States, you've got the USD as your currency. What this currency ultimately gives you is power, right? It gives you the ability to influence trade
Yeah.
within a specific physical space. And what cryptocurrencies give you is the ability to completely bash those walls down, right? Right now, if I want to play poker, right? I like playing poker online. And if I'm in India, if I'm an Indian citizen, maybe India is not a great example because things are changing there. But there was a time in South Africa where I couldn't sign into a popular poker site and pay with my credit card to buy credits online. Right. So if I
Right.
wanted to play a cash game of poker, typically you would want to take your credit card, you'd want to put in the details, and you would want to play a game of poker. Now, if I'm not able to do that using my credit card because my bank is geographically located in South Africa, where there are certain rules and regulations around how currency should not be used for gambling, I can very much bypass that entire system by buying Bitcoin, sending Bitcoin to this address, and then allowing them to credit my poker game with an equivalent amount of USD. So, I mean, I understand why it's a very dangerous and scary precedent to set, and I completely understand why regulators want to regulate it. And I'm actually not opposed to the idea at all. I think, in general,
Yeah.
regulators' jobs are there to protect the vulnerable. And as long as they're doing that, and as long as the vulnerable are being protected, I think it's absolute. They should regulate the crap out of it, honestly.
Yeah.
And they should really bring the education as part of that regulation. They should make it easy to understand what the regulation is, because ultimately regulation brings education. It puts
True.
Yeah,
pen on
I
paper.
have. Regulation is, I think, such a big topic with this, and it's probably one of the things that I have mentioned previously to anyone asking me about crypto. But before we go into any of that, there's another term that we wanted to break down with you that's taken in conjunction with the crypto, Yashu, which is blockchain.
Yeah.
And many
Okay.
people think they understand, but maybe you can explain it in your easy, digestible manner. And also, as an extension, I think if you could kind of give us some idea of how this would impact our lives, how it would be a part of our lives. From what I understand, blockchain is a broader concept that will impact a lot of different areas of our lives, right?
100%. So again, I've had this conversation many times where someone understands what cryptocurrency is, or they've heard of cryptocurrency, but they haven't heard about blockchain, which is surprising, right? Because actually blockchain came about before cryptocurrency. Blockchain is ultimately is a data structure. It's a computer science data structure. It was developed in the I think in the early 90s, right? It was only until 2008 that its first practical application really became quite popular, which was with the advent of Bitcoin. Now,
Right.
at its most core level, a blockchain is you can split it up into two words. You've got block and you've got chain. Block represents a list of ledger entries, and the chain ultimately just means blocks that are continuously added upon in a linear fashion. So you can mathematically prove that this set of ledger entries precedes this set of ledger entries, which precedes this set of ledger entries. And each one of those ledger entries is a snapshot of the state of that ledger at that point in time. So imagine you've got state A, where we've got 5 people that have a balance of 0 in an accounting ledger. State B is that someone deposits money into this ledger. Then in that state, in that blockchain B, in that blockchain state B, that person, Yashu, has a balance of 5, right? In the next state, Yashu sends a value of 1 to Rupali. So Yashu's balance goes down to 4, Rupali's balance goes up to 1. Ultimately, that's all it is. The entire blockchain actually is just that. It's a bunch of addresses. Those addresses have a positive value on them, positive or 0, right? And when you're sending money or when you're sending Bitcoin to someone else, all that's happening is that you're adding to a ledger entry that your address is going to be subtracted by some value, a different address is going to be added to by some value, and you're much like in the current banking world. When you transact and you pay a banking fee, you're going to pay a fee to the person that blocks that mines your block. Now, I'll get into what mining your block means in the most simple case, but a practical example here is quite useful. Blockchain is something that's quite scalable. So, like I mentioned, it's a computer science data structure, and it's a computer science data structure that can be easily scaled. However, what can't be scaled and what takes quite a lot of energy and time to scale is consensus. And I think that's something that we hold true in society as well, be it voting, be it, just agreeing on what's for supper, right? Like when you want to agree for what's for supper, you need 5 people in your house to agree that, yesterday we had pizza, so today we should probably have a salad. And there's negotiations that take place in between. Whoever talks first is probably also likely to create a bias. So consensus in general is quite a difficult thing, but blockchain makes it slightly easier in that the data structure allows for the ledger entries to self prove themselves. And how does this happen? Each block or each set of ledger entries not only includes the debits and credits of a balance, but it also includes a reference to the previous block. And what that allows us to do is that at any point in time, if someone was to tweak a ledger entry from a prior block, that tweak would propagate all the way through to the head of that chain. And if we have thousands of computers that all agree that the head of the chain is state 123, and the result of that tweak by a malicious actor caused the head of the chain to become 456, and how this comes about is again a computer science topic of hashing, which we can go to if we really want to. But ultimately, there's this beautiful function that takes in a bunch of inputs and gives you a very unique number at the end, with the smallest amount of change in any input, resulting in a really large change in the output. So if 5,000
Right.
computers agree that the state of the chain is 123, and a small change, which is, by like double crediting Yashu for a deposit, causes the chain to become drastically different, 567, then 4,999 computers agree that was incorrect. So they'll stick to the consensus of the state being 123. And so that's what blockchain really is. Blockchain is this thing, again, a tool that allows us to trust that the computers that are giving us this information of this person has this much balance, therefore he is able to pay me this amount of tokens. It allows us to rely on that using math.
Oh, I had a completely different understanding to this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yashu, in layman's terms. I understood that it was a really secure system because it was almost like if you had a contract, and I suppose contract signage is one of the practical uses of blockchain that I'm
100%.
aware of. But if you had a contract, from what I understood, it was, let's say, in layman's terms, torn into 100 pieces, and those 100 pieces were stored in different parts of the world. You could not make any changes or exercise the contract without those 100 parts coming together. So, my understanding was very different in terms of this being a very storage based security system instead of as you said, with the checks and balances. So it's interesting to get, maybe what I know is totally wrong.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not technically a bad analogy, but instead of it being split up into 100,000 pieces, I would say there's 100,000 copies, right?
Copies,
Anyone
okay.
that's it's copies. So what is the what this is actually is strength in numbers. So it's ultimately like how likely is it that so given the information of how many nodes there are, a node is ultimately a computer
Yeah,
that runs this program and the program that validates and adds and removes these ledger entries to the ledger. The question is, how likely is it that a lot of these computers would be tricked into into executing a contract or a copy of a contract that is different from what is actually the true contract. So what
got
are the
it.
chances that could happen? And the blockchain is ultimately just a mechanism that allows you to some degree of confidence prove that, because again consensus is it does kind of fall into like things like democracy, right? So like when you vote, it's not that the party won because they got all the votes, but they got most of the votes. And so another concept that might come up in future in terms of blockchain is things like 51% attacks, things that terms that you might have heard are things like 51% attacks. And what that is actually is just that there's a majority of bad actors in the ecosystem. And if you have a majority of bad actors in the ecosystem, then they could outvote the correct state of the chain. And the blockchain actually doesn't protect against that at all. What does protect against that is financial models and tokenomics models such as proof of work or proof of stake. So a very large conversation in the blockchain space recently would
Wow.
have been the proof of work versus proof of stake mechanisms. And I mean, that's a whole topic of its own. But it's ultimately like if you really had to break it down, it's like if we were running a country and that country required elections every 5 minutes to determine what the next step was to take in that country, what would be the most efficient way of running those elections? Would we, would we use the internet, or would we all send each other little chits that say, "No, I vote for this person," and then they pass on that note to the next person? So there's very unoptimal ways of running elections, and then there's very optimal ways of running elections. But it depends on the size, one, the size of the community, and it depends two on what the extent of the problem is. Like if you're solving a very complex problem, then you really need to figure out how to make this more efficient. If it's things like what are we going to eat tonight, then you can make it super inefficient. Like you can all take turns writing on a board, and it can be super inefficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
such a big topic, actually. I think the little bit that I understood from this entire conversation was that blockchain is something that keeps your crypto investments or your crypto holdings safe because of the checks and balances. That was one. And two, blockchain is kind of an enabler for crypto. So it's required for it, right? You can't
Correct.
have crypto without it. Yeah. So basically,
Correct.
those are the two things I took away. And as you were talking, I was just thinking that there's so much that is unknown in this space, right? It's the fear of unknown that kind of really puts people off certain things, takes people time to kind of, get on with it. So technology, we spoke about AI last week where we said, oh, it's such an unknown. When we grew up, cell phones were kind of taken on really slowly. In our family, especially, quite conservative. We got cell phones when we were much older. So I think there's a huge linkage with the fear of of unknown. And I think what makes crypto so interesting yet scary is that the magnitude of it, the magnitude of the impact it can have on someone's life in a good or a bad way.
We will continue with this super interesting chat on the complex topic of crypto with our expert Tanna next week. Please tune in for more insights next Friday. If you enjoyed this episode today, please don't forget to leave a review or a comment to let us know and motivate us on our journey.
So with that, we bring this episode of our financial adventure to an end. Please follow us on all social media platforms at Fantastic Females.
None of the information provided is financial advice, and Fantastic Females is not a financial advisor.
The information provided is educational only. It is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances.
Please use your own due diligence before making any financial or investment decisions.